Guess who's going to be announced either later today or early tomorrow as a new columnist in the Daily Mail? Go on, have a guess. Boris Johnson, having been found to be the single most dishonest Prime Minister in the history of that office, having been found by a jury, if you like, of his own peers to have lied about lying, gets rewarded with a column in a newspaper where the editor-in-chief is someone that he wanted to put into the chairman's chair at Ofcom, the broadcast regulator, and someone so devoured by his desperation for a peerage that he has essentially unhitched the best-selling newspaper in the country from any semblance of truth or values. Do you see now that I'm not mad? The absolute subversion of the truth that newspapers have undertaken in this country is close to complete now. How do you cling still to the carcass of the idea that Boris Johnson is not all of the things that, for example, Eddie Mair called him in that famous interview a few years ago? How do you cling to it? How on earth, with the weight of evidence in front of you now, and it doesn't even need the Privileges Committee report. We had already, Sue Gray or the Metropolitan Police, or just the evidence of your own eyes and ears. If you've listened to this programme even in passing for the last few years, you can probably sing along now to the list of lies. Fired from his first job for making up quotes from his own godfather. Appointed still, despite that shameful past, to a job on the Daily Telegraph where he continued, where the bloke who gave him the job now is one of the leading exposers of the lies that he has told ever since. Lied to mistresses, lied to wives, lied to employers, lied to party leaders, lied to colleagues, lied to constituents, lied to interviewers. It's absolutely incredible that somebody so fundamentally dishonest could have reached the highest office in the land. A man who has done more to subvert the standards and traditions of this country, the standards and values of our democracy, than any other in living memory. Not because he was so awful, not just because he was and is so awful, but because he got to the biggest job in the land. And how did he get to the biggest job in the land? Because the people whose job it is to tell you the truth joined him in his lies, initially about Brexit, but subsequently about everything. And most of all, of course, about him. So here is, imagine if, even as the crowd was shouting, he's naked, he's naked, he's naked. Imagine if 80% of the newspapers in that empire were insisting that he was beautifully clothed, even now. Insisting that the people calling him naked are plotters and saboteurs. He's not naked, he's beautifully robed. It's a witch hunt. It's a stitch-up. It's a hit job. He's there. He is stark, rollick, naked. So the Daily Mail have decided to give him a newspaper column, just as they've given one to Nadine Dorries. Arguably the two most ridiculous politicians in an incredibly crowded field, rewarded for their idiocy and dishonesty, actually rewarded for it. That's incredible, especially when you consider that proper journalists at the Mail are being made redundant as we speak. They are actually being rewarded. So that's why this morning I was tempted to say, do you get it yet? Do you see how bad it is? It's not just, business as usual, that's a little bit rum. It's absolutely rotten to the core. The same people that spent 2 weeks pretending that Keir Starmer had a case to answer for eating a curry will already, well, possibly not already, but before the day is out, certainly before the weekend is out, they'll be pretending that this doesn't matter or that people want to move on or that the world turns. How many things do these clowns have to pretend that people want to move on from? They want to move on from Partygate. They want to move on from Brexit. They want to move on from Boris Johnson's shame. They want to move on from Sue Gray. They want to move on from the Metropolitan Police fines. They want to move on from the 40 hospitals lie. They want to move on from the PPE. No, they don't. And if they do, it's only because so much of the so-called fourth estate is dedicated to not just broadcasting these lies, but inflating them. So where do they go this morning? Tory revolt over vindictive bid to banish Boris. It's beyond. what would you call it? It's beyond, it's almost beyond comprehension now. The pure cultishness of what is happening here. Because it's not just a refusal to accept reality. That you could just about understand. This is beyond sticking your fingers in your ears and going, la, 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 don't want to talk about it. This is actively doubling down on the deceiver. Promoting him. Not just defending him, but promoting him, hiring him, signing him up. And the same with Boris. This desperate need to return constantly to the trough and feed more on his lies. And then regurgitate them, and then repeat them, and then defend them. And then insist that he's a man more sinned against than sinning. It's incredible, right? It doesn't make sense. You saw it a little bit with the last leader of the Labour Party, just an utter inability to acknowledge observable truth. In his case, basic unelectability. In Boris Johnson's case, base immorality. For even the most cursory student of political history, this is epochal. This is chapter-level stuff in histories of British politics. This is Anthony Eden, Neville Chamberlain, Lord North. This is the catalogue of the worst ever prime ministerial moments. It's a contender for the very top spot. And still these people pop up to defend him. And still people invite them. Kit O'Harry, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nadine Dorries, Brendan Clark-Smith. It's incredible. So now that we are having our noses, forgive me for this image, I don't think I'll return to it, but we have now had our noses rubbed in the emperor's nakedness so completely that you wonder whether you'll ever be able to wash off the stench. What the hell explains the Daily Mail giving him a column?